weight of what we keep. Could a woman built on the truth of others survive the discovery that her own life was founded on a lie? The archivist had spent 15 years inside the silence of the Municipal Library of Seville, in the spring of 1923, cataloguing the dead. Not bodies, exactly, but everything the dead had left behind: letters sealed with wax, ledgers of forgotten commerce, property deeds for houses long since crumbled. She was 34 and unmarried, which in Seville, at that time, was a condition treated with a mixture of pity and suspicion. She did not mind. She had learned very early that other people's expectation was a weight she did not have to carry. She had been abandoned at the age of 6. Not dramatically. No orphanage, no tragedy. Her mother had simply handed her to a convent school in Córdoba, promised to return within the week, and never come back. The archivist had waited at the gate for 3 days before a nun finally took her inside by the hand. She grew up believing that love was a promise people made when they still intended to keep it, and broke when life made keeping it inconvenient. So she put her faith in documents. Documents did not abandon. They held exactly what had been placed in them. Then the engineer arrived. He came to Seville in February, hired by the city to survey the old aqueduct network ahead of an ambitious restoration project, part of a broader effort to modernize the city before the 1929 Ibero-American Exposition. He was Portuguese, 40 years old, and had a reputation that preceded him through official channels: disciplined, meticulous, difficult. He came to the library because the original Roman maps of Seville's underground water channels were kept there, locked in a flat cabinet no one had opened in 20 years. She opened it for him. That was the beginning. The engineer was a man who moved through spaces as though measuring them. He walked close to walls. He spoke in precise sentences. He took notes in the margins of his own notes. The archivist recognized something in this: a man who had learned to take up as little room as possible. She did not pry. She gave him the maps and left him at the long table by the window. He came back the next morning. And the one after. By the third week, they were eating lunch on the steps behind the library, in the pale warmth of a Sevillian February, sharing bread and olives and, slowly, sentences that had nothing to do with aqueducts. She told him about a letter she had found that week, written by a woman to her husband who had gone to the Americas in 1840 and never returned. The engineer listened with the kind of attention most people reserve only for information they will be tested on later. He told her, in return, that he had been engaged once, to a woman in Lisbon. She had married someone else while he was away on a survey project in the Azores. He said it without bitterness, which she found more unsettling than bitterness would have been. Their falling in love was not a single event but a sequence of small surrenders. She showed him things no one else had touched: a hand-drawn map of a street that no longer existed, a bundle of recipes written in Arabic, a photograph of the library as it had looked in 1870. He showed her his field notebooks, with their precise measurements and their occasional margin sketches, small drawings of things he had seen that had no technical relevance but that he could not resist recording. A pigeon on a buttress. A child's shoe left in a plaza. She understood that these were the things he loved and could not account for. By April, they were in love. Either of them said so. But they lingered at the door of the library each evening, and the goodbyes grew longer and more complicated. And one afternoon he reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and then looked startled by his own hand, and she did not step back. The obstacle arrived, as obstacles often do, in the form of a bureaucratic letter. The engineer was summoned to a meeting with the city commissioner, who informed him that the aqueduct project was being restructured. The Portuguese government had concerns about a citizen spending 14 months in a foreign country. The engineer would need to return to Lisbon by July to renew his work authorization and defend the project to a joint committee. The process, the commissioner estimated, could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. After that, it was not certain he would be reassigned to Seville. Budgets were shifting. Politics were shifting. Everything was shifting. The engineer came to the library that afternoon and told her directly. He was not a man who softened things. She listened. She set down the document she was holding. She said, "I see." Those two words covered a great deal. What she did not say, that she had known this was coming, in the way you know a storm is coming not from the sky but from the quality of the air. That she had kept waiting for the thing that would take it all away, because in her experience, love was always prelude to departure. That she was already preparing herself, in the small cold rooms of her interior life, to be left again. She said, "When do you leave?" He said, "That is not what I came here to discuss." She looked at him. He said, "I want to ask you to come to Lisbon with me. Not for the committee, not for the project. As my wife." The room was very quiet. Dust moved in the afternoon light. She said she would think about it. This was not true. She had already decided. She had decided no. Not because she did not love him, but because she did, and because she knew that she would follow this man across a border and into a city where she knew no one, and she would remake her entire life around a promise, and promises could be broken. It would be catastrophic. She would not survive it a second time. She spent 3 days in this decision. She was very good at being alone. She walked through the archive after closing time and ran her hands along the spines of the oldest ledgers and told herself that this was enough. This had always been enough. Then she found the letter. It was misfiled, buried in a batch of correspondence from the 1890s that she had been cataloging for a restoration grant. The envelope was addressed in a handwriting she did not recognize. The name on the letter was the name of the convent school in Córdoba where she had grown up. She opened it, as she was permitted to by her professional mandate. It was from the City of Seville's Civil Registry Office, dated 1895, addressed to the head sister. It referenced a girl, 6 years old, left in the care of the convent by a woman who had been committed, involuntarily, to a sanatorium in Granada 3 days after dropping the child at the gate. The letter confirmed that the woman had died in the sanatorium in 1901. The registry was writing to ensure the child had been properly documented. The child's name was her name. Her mother had not left her. Her mother had been taken away. There was a difference so large it had no bottom. She sat at her desk for a very long time. Outside, the bells of the Giralda counted out the quarter hours. She had spent 28 years carrying the version of herself that had been abandoned, the girl at the gate who was not worth returning for, and that version had shaped everything, every wall, every refusal, every careful distance. And it had been built on the wrong story. She thought about the engineer's margin sketches. The pigeon. The shoe. The things he loved that he could not account for. She put the letter in her bag and walked out of the library and across the city to his rented room on Calle Sierpes, and she knocked on his door. When he opened it, she said, "I have something to tell you, and then I need you to ask me again." She told him about the letter. She told him, for the first time, the real story of her childhood, the full architecture of it, not the dignified version she had practiced but the 6-year-old at the convent gate. He listened without interrupting, without reaching for her, simply present in the way he was always present, as though he had nowhere else to be. When she finished, he said, "Ask you what?" She said, "You know what?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Would you come to Lisbon with me?" She said yes. But Lisbon complicated itself almost immediately. When the engineer presented their plans to his family, his older brother, who managed the family's civil engineering firm and controlled the contracts that funded much of the engineer's work, made his opposition very plain. He did not think a Spanish archivist with no family connections and no money was an appropriate wife for a man whose professional reputation was beginning to attract serious institutional attention. He said this in front of her. He said it once, clearly, and then did not say it again, because he was a practical man and thought it was enough. It was almost enough. The engineer, who had spent his career dependent on his brother's network of contacts, who had never successfully completed a major project without the firm's backing, who had told her once that family was the only thing he had not learned to do without, went silent for 4 days. She understood what the silence meant. She had catalogued enough history to know that men did not easily choose against the structures that had built them. She packed her trunk. She wrote a letter to the director of the Seville Library requesting to resume her position. She left the letter unsealed on the table of the small room she was renting near the Alfama district, so that she could still decide not to send it. On the 4th day, the engineer went to his brother's office. She did not know what was said. He never told her in full, and she never asked. He came back in the evening with his hands in his pockets, and a look on his face like a man who had just set down something very heavy. He said, "I told him that I would find my own contracts, that the firm could keep the name." She said, "You did not have to do that." He said, "I have been doing what other people required of me for 40 years. I think I can afford one decision for myself." She picked up the letter to Seville and tore it into pieces. They were married in Lisbon in September 1923, in a civil ceremony with 2 witnesses, the superintendent of the aqueduct project and a woman from the Alfama neighborhood who had lent her a needle and thread the previous week and been invited on the strength of that small kindness. The engineer rebuilt his professional practice slowly, on independent commissions, which were more precarious but also, she noticed, more interesting to him. He began to sketch again in his margins, more than before. She found work at the Biblioteca Nacional, first as a temporary cataloger and then, within 2 years, as head of the Historical Manuscripts Division. Seville's archives sent her letters occasionally, asking questions only she could answer, and she answered them by post with the careful thoroughness of someone who still loved the work and no longer needed it to love her back. In the spring of 1925, she received a package from the Córdoba convent. The head sister, very old by then, had been sorting through decades of correspondence and found the civil registry's letter of 1895, the original, along with a small photograph of her mother taken before her illness. A young woman with the archivist's own cheekbones and her same way of standing slightly apart from everything, as though measuring the distance. She put the photograph in a frame on her desk, between the dictionary and the lamp, where she could see it without looking for it. That evening, when the engineer came home from a site visit along the Tagus, he sat across from her at the dinner table and noticed the photograph immediately, because he noticed everything. He asked who it was. She said, "My mother." It turns out she was looking for a way back the whole time. She just ran out of time to find it. He reached across the table and took her hand, and they sat for a while without talking, in the particular quiet of 2 people who have made a home out of the things they used to be afraid of, and found, to their considerable surprise, that the home holds. Did you enjoy today's story? Stay with me for just a moment. Let me know in the comments, which city are you watching from? Did this message touch you? And if you have ideas for future stories, feel free to share them. Your suggestion could become our next video. Leave a like if this message meant something to you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. If you think someone else would appreciate this message, please share it. And if you'd like to support the channel, take a look at the links in the description. Some are affiliate links, which help us at no extra cost to you. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.